the SwissPeaks 360 race recap. Taking on the most technical 200-miler in the Alps. This isn't running, this is canyoning. And that was the most intense lightning storm I've ever been on a mountain pass. The hallucination surprise attacked me, and I lost my mind in a matter of seconds. But could it all come together? And now I'm hobble running, 2 poles, 1 leg, then 1 broke, and now I'm just 1 pole, 1 leg, hobbling around. The SwissPeaks is probably the most challenging 200-miler in the Alps. It's 360 kilometers and it has about 28,000 meters of gain and more descent because you start in the mountains, way up and deep in the Swiss mountains, and you make your way all the way to Lake Geneva. The race is famous for its technicality and its views, but how technical could it be? And just how scenic was it going to be? The weather leading into SwissPeaks was looking really grim and I couldn't be happier. I'd had a couple steamy races where I totally lost it, just melted down, became a jellyfish. So I was looking forward to these cooler temps. But the day before the race, the weather ditched the cooler temps and decided to go about 10 degrees warmer. And this was going to be an experience because this was my first 200-miler that wasn't the Tour. So we had a Sunday noon start. Weather was getting a little hot. I knew it was going to get hotter in the afternoon, but it was a spectacular start to the race. You kind of start in the hills, even though you are in the mountains. You do stay to the lower foothills of the mountains. And that first section is really beautiful, quite runnable, and just eases in nicely. We started off, the pace wasn't ludicrous, and we covered about 50K and 3,000 meters of elevation gain pretty quick. After the first life base in Fish, you head up into the mountains for the first time of the race. It's a giant climb. I left there in the early evening and it started to get dark, but the cooler temperatures were really welcome. We made our way and we stayed up high quite a bit after that, which was amazing. And this was one of the darkest nights I've ever had in the mountains. There was no moon, no clouds to reflect any light off the towns, and just the stars were out. Now, when I had left Fish, I had entered Fish, the first life base, with several other competitors, but I went to a different section of the life base and then decided to leave quite quickly, and I didn't know where they were. And it turned out I was the first one out of the life base, and this was actually the last time I would see another runner for the entire race, which was a totally different experience for me because I've never run alone or out front for 80 hours or so. And trying to keep that mental focus when you don't have anyone close to you, it was such an experience and really, really difficult mentally. And on that first night, way in the distance, I could see this massive lightning storm. And it was one of those moments that really makes like racing at nighttime through the mountains so special. With some really steep and technical descents coming down that first night, and the heat damage I probably took during the first day, my quads, my legs were actually feeling quite damaged, quite beat up, considering we had only been racing now for 12 to 16 hours. The third section of the race, going from life base number 2 to life base number 3, was spectacular and just classic vintage alpine racing. You had the multi-hour ascents coupled with the quad bashing long descents that are completely runnable, and they just destroy you, and it's really about how much damage you want to take to your quads and how fast you want to. The biggest of the 3 climbs of this section was one out of St. Nicholas, and it was about 1,700 meters climb. And it was broken up into several sections. And the first one was beautiful, classic alpine foothills into a little village on the top of the valley, and then got into a boulder field, and this thing was ridiculous. Now, unless your family name is Hornet, your VO2 max is above 90, and you get to bed before 9 p.m., like you're not running this section. This was technical. I was using my hands, put away my poles because it was just, I had to use my hands as well going up here. And after you get through that boulder field, there's still another massive ascent to the col. As I crossed the boulder field, I thought I was actually having stage 2 hallucinations because I saw a group of novice hikers and they were doing something that looked like the elephant parade, kind of where you put your arm through your leg and the next guy grabs it and you grab the guy in front of you. This is how they were trying to cross the boulder field, I think for safety, but it was bizarre and I actually thought I was hallucinating when I first saw this going on. Now this is going from life base 3 to life base 4. It's a pretty shorter section, 2 mountain passes to climb over, and it ended at the Grand Descent, the 007 dam, which I was incredibly excited to see because this is where I spent a lot of my childhood in a video game, GoldenEye 007. And I was really, really excited to see this thing. It turned out when I got there, it was completely foggy and I couldn't see any of it. One of the passes was up through a ski resort, which was extremely hikeable and most of it was runnable, but I'd eaten something, and every time that I put a little bit of exertion into running, I instantly had to pop over to the bush, bathroom break, oh no! And as we got towards that dam, like I said, we couldn't see anything. I met my crew there and we were both like, where's the dam, where's the dam? Because we couldn't see 10 feet, 3 meters in front of us. It was just such thick fog at night, and with your headlamp on, it lights up right in front of you, and really, like, I could hardly see where I was putting my foot. So we didn't even know we were the dam was close to us until we were actually stepping on top of it. So this was the middle of the second night. I had now been racing for 36 hours about, and I decided to try to have a sleep. Now in this race, I knew I was going in and I was gonna try a couple different sleep strategies, where typically I've been doing 20-minute naps and cots that the race will have out. So I'm like, I'm gonna try a cot nap versus a table nap. Now this one was gonna be a cot nap, and I wanted to time it to see how long it was gonna take, to see how much wastage and faffing time that there was gonna be, compare it to a table nap, and then also try and judge the restfulness and how the ability that I had to reset with it. So at the dam, I had a 20-minute cot nap, lie down nap, blanket on and everything. And what it turned out to be was about 40 minutes total to get 20 minutes of napping time. That wasn't great. So next step was gonna be the table nap the following night. When I was leaving that life base, my crew told me I had about a 2-hour to 3-hour lead on the next competition. So now I find it hard to motivate myself to push because you guys are so far behind, and now really I'm just focusing on not effing this whole thing up and just getting there. The fourth section, going between life base 4 and life base 5, was supposed to be the most difficult. And it was really difficult, but that was until I got to the next section, but I didn't know that then. I always have one of those sections in a 200-miler where I fall apart really quickly. And the Grand Desert, or the Grand Desert, was that place for me. It's a really high plateau. I think it's almost near 3,000 meters, maybe 2,500 meters. And it's a barren desert of boulders and nothing else. And it was slow going, and I was just having a real mental low, and I was falling apart quick. And I don't know if it was a combination of, it was the third morning, so dawn is always a tough time for me, hallucinations, energy-wise, everything. Or it was the altitude or whatnot, but every action felt like it was an effort of 10 out of 10. It was just max effort, doing everything, just climbing, walking over a boulder. It's like, oh, that took forever. Now, my most memorable moment of the Grand Desert wasn't actually my moment. It was my friend Volker, who was caught there in a enormous lightning and rainstorm that hit the race and actually caused the race to pause later on. He's a pretty epic guy. He's trying to do the triple crown of European ultras, PTL, SwissPeaks, and then the Tour de Glaciers. So those 3 in a row, which you almost have to, it's one after another, literally like weeks after another. So he was trying to do that, and hearing his story from there, it sounded awful. And this is a tough guy. The SwissPeaks trail briefly overlaps the UTMB trail at Lac Combal, I think. And you run along there, and the UTMB takes the pushchair pass around mountain to Trient. And the SwissPeaks obviously takes the hard mountain over. I'd done this a long time ago in training, so I thought I knew it, but it's coming from a different direction. And this is where I really just lost it, losing energy, losing everything. And as soon as I was getting to the pass, the actual, to go over to the other side, that massive lightning storm and rainstorm, the first section of it came in, and I had to hunker down behind a boulder as lightning hit, and like there's just sheets of rain coming everywhere. Then it was freezing, and it was quite the experience, although it did help wake me up a little bit. As I arrived in Trient, I was a bit of a mess. I said I needed to have a nap, and they're like, no, you need to keep going, try and get to the life base before they pause the race. Pause or cancel was the rumor at the time, because the storm that we had already been through was actually gonna get worse. It was gonna be significantly worse. And so I said, okay, I'll try and make it to the next aid station, which was the life base. So off I went, and it wasn't a very tough section, but I went over, you climb 300 meters, you go down, but you descend quite far into this old strewn, and it looked like Tomb Raider. This place was crazy. Maybe it was because I was third night and I'm starting to hallucinate. And with the storm also, because the rain was going sideways, there was lightning, so it was lighting up all these old ruins, and well, I think they were ruins, maybe they were rocks. And it was hard to find the trail, and it was just an insane experience. And as soon as I got to the life base, the storm dissipated and it was almost gone. But I think I was so stressed out from this experience in the forest, constantly couldn't find my way, like backtracking and going different directions just to try and find the flags, because the storm was so intense that you couldn't see that well as night. So with my lamp on and the rain coming down, it just made visibility really difficult. So I got to the town, and this is a tiny little town of Finhut, and I got lost. I couldn't find the life base, even though I think normally it would take me 2 seconds to find the life base if I just ended up in this town. So it took me 15 minutes of wandering around, and I entered life base, and they said, oh, the race has been paused. So they said, you cannot leave now until we restart the race.
Because I saw you in the afternoon, you stopped smiling. You had a moment of, you were tired, really tired.
Yeah, I was really tired for a long time.
The fifth section of the race had a lot of drama to it, because when I arrived, there was a lot of confusion about what was happening with the race. Was it pausing? Was it canceling? What was the deal? And it could have been because I don't speak French, and that translation was a bit rough. But it turned out that the race was being paused. So for the runners still out there who weren't stopped at an aid station or a life base, would have the time that they were stopped for, the time taken off their finishing time. And the runners who are still going would just have their normal finishing time. This didn't happen. They didn't take any time off of anyone's, even though I stopped in this life base for 2 hours. Fortunately, it didn't affect anything. But I thought it was quite funny. It's like, yeah, here's the plan, but at the end of the race, it's like, that's okay. Let's forget about that. But as soon as I understood that the race was being paused, and at the time, I didn't know how long it was going to be paused for, I just totally lost my ambition and my zeal and my animal for the race. And it just totally went to mush. And this is my body started to go into shutdown mode. A part of that was probably because I actually had a shower and a 1 hour sleep. And that's the first time in a race I've ever slept for an hour, like, what, an hour? And had a shower, which was, I think it just triggered my body to think the race was over. Anyway, so my crew fortunately kicked me out the life base and I started making it up this mountain. And I'd seen in a recap video from Jeff Peltier that this section was really slow. So I was expecting it, but it was crazy. This was canyoning. This wasn't even running. I was just trying to make it down this section of rock, and it was just, it looked like a riverbed you're trying to go down. A slippery, rocky riverbed. Probably made worse by the massive storm we just had, because now there was a river in this riverbed that we were making our way down. And the section was so slow, I couldn't believe it. I think I covered this 5K section in an hour and a half or something. And now coming into Morgan's, which was the last life base before the finish, I was feeling pretty good about where we were, and I made a big discovery that even though I'm slightly dairy not likey, I was able to eat raclette. Raclette is the Swiss cheese thing where you heat it up and you kind of shave it off and eat it. And I got fairly aggressive with this raclette cheese. And I think it really gave me a good energy boost. Leaving Morgan's, I had my classic blisters on my feet. They weren't too bad, but I could feel them definitely on the downhills. They were affecting me. But when you enter Morgan's, you're out of the mountains and now you're into the foothills. And you climb a fairly small hill, probably just short of a 1,000-meter climb. And you get your first view of Lake Geneva. And it's such a fun, special moment. Maybe I was probably also feeling well because of the raclette. And you see it, and it was daylight for me, so I was fortunate to be able to see it. And you've been traveling to this destination the entire time, which is really, really fun in mostly one direction. And when you see it, it's like a massive relief, but there was so much more of the race to go. So my speed had definitely dropped through these foothills, but I was maintaining my lead, so I wasn't worried. I was just taking it easy, just don't mess it up. My feet were hurting, well, everything's hurting, but my feet were blistering, but I was fine. I'm gonna just cruise it in here. I got to one of the second last aid station, and it was now dark, and I was eating, and they're telling me, they're like, hey, the second place guy is now an hour behind you. And now I'm doing some quick calculus, 3 minus 1 plus 2. Oh man, he's caught up 2 hours. Holy moly, like that math was intense. It's also the fourth night. And I kind of forgot because in the tour, I typically tried not to go into the fourth night, or I'd finish before going into the fourth night. Now the fourth night, the hallucinations can really sneak up on you. And typically I will go through the 4 stages in order. So stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. And when I get to stage 3, when I'm talking to completely made up hallucinations and interacting with them, I know I need to take a nap because I'm about to completely lose my mind. And then I did completely lose my mind. I was going up a short uphill. It wasn't very steep, which is boring, and which means that is the hardest time to stay focused, is these uphills that are extremely boring and slow. So I'm going up there, and all of a sudden I open my eyes and I kind of come to, and I'm 90 degrees or perpendicular to the path. So now there's flags going out in either direction. And I'm thinking, oh man, I don't know which way I came from and which way to go. So I'm starting to like hyperventilate. I'm having a mini panic attack over here. And I sit down on a rock. I'm like, okay, just breathe. So I had a couple of deep breaths. I called my mom, who's my crew, so it wasn't like super weird. And I said, hey, I don't know where I am. I don't know which way I'm going. I don't know what I'm doing. And so they fortunately have crewed me so many times. They actually know how to deal with me in this situation of losing my mind. So we had to play a little game where I would walk 100 meters and like, am I going the right way? And she's like, no. So I would go the other 100 meters and like, okay, you're going the right way. Just stay focused, keep going straight. And so I did. And then it ends up going down a really steep technical descent. And the whole time I'm a little bit confused because as I was looking at Lake Geneva coming down this kind of ridge hill line, I could tell the path went off to the left. And I was like, man, that seems weird. And it was kind of messing with me because I was starting to lose my mind. And since it was messing with me, like this was also taking a lot of my concentration, and I'm going down the steep descent, thinking about going left, and I'm like, I should have gone going right. Is this real? Is this real? Are these flags real? What's real? Who's real? What's reality? I'm going down, and something in my leg pops, and my knee pops. And I was like, whatever, it'll go away. So I keep going, keeps getting worse, and it impairs my descending. So now I'm hobbling down. So I've got 2 poles in one leg, and I'm kind of using them as crutches going down, and I can't go down. Normally I don't descend with poles, but I had to get them back out because I couldn't actually go down the last descent here. Now pair this with that I know that this guy is catching me. He's only an hour behind at the aid station when I was still running and had most of my mind power. Now I've lost my mind, I've lost the leg, and I've got to make it probably 10K to the finish line. I enter the last aid station, and now it's just an easy up and then an easy down. But it's not so easy when you don't have your mind functioning and you don't have a leg. Fortunately, I can run uphill. And so I ran uphill, and it felt like I was just going 4-minute mile pace, or, you know, a sub 3-minute kilometers. And I was probably going so slow probably, but I made it up the hill, but the descent was still so tough. And I'm hobbling using my poles, and I've got this crazy motion going on using the straps on my poles, but I'm putting so much pressure on it, I actually snap off the ring of the ring that goes into your poles. The whole handle breaks off, and I'm like, oh man, now I've got 1 leg, 1 pole. Great, so I've lost the leg, lost the pole, lost 1 mind. Not good. So I am in a lot of pain with my leg. My blisters are not feeling great. I'm losing limbs and I'm losing equipment, like constantly, but I do hobble it in. This is the first time I finished and I actually just felt relief because I felt under so much pressure from being chased. And it turned out the guy was only 25 minutes behind me or so after a 86-hour race. So looking back on the data, I can tell that I actually had a 4-hour lead at one point. And towards the end of the race, when I was just, you know, having a laugh, he gained on me, it stayed about 2 hours. It really accelerated towards the end when it got more runnable. Apparently he could still run. And then he almost caught me right at the end.
Le premier donc du SwissPeaks voilà, winner. This is Galen Meadows.
Okay.
So the organizers of the SwissPeaks 360 are excellent. They really did an excellent job. It's that Swiss precision, even with the little details. Like when I crossed the line, obviously the guys were there announcing that I had to do an interview, which is always mind-blowing. And they also did a bottle of champagne. So this is really nice little touches.
Just starting slowly on the right.
Okay, Galen. First, well done, and congratulations for this big exploit you had today. I mean, you're the first not European to win the SwissPeaks. You ran, as we said before, always alone. And you did a great race. Just talk a little bit about this race.
This race was really quite different than anything I had done before because it was almost like an experience. Like it was really challenging. There's a whole bunch of different variety of terrain. The weather acted up a little bit, which made it interesting. And the volunteers and the support were unbelievable.
Thank you. Now it's time to go and sleep. But no, a little bit of stretching first.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. I think I'll just go straight to sleep. Thanks, Ivan.
And then for the final ceremony, it was a kind of tour style where people finish I finished Thursday morning about 1 a.m. The ceremonies are on Sunday and brings everyone together. It was right on the Lake Geneva, right on the shores of Lake Geneva, which was a spectacular scene. And it was fun just to see all the competitors again, which it always is in these kind of events, because you go through something so special together. You have this bond, even though you don't even speak the same language. And it doesn't really matter what time you finish it. It's just, did you finish is the question, not how long was it. So SwissPeaks is a highly recommended 200 miler, although I would not recommend it for your first 200 miler because it's incredibly intense. It is spectacular. It is the most beautiful race I've probably ever done from start to finish. And it is very, very tough. Hey, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions or comments or things you'd like me to touch on, or questions about the race or any 200 miler, leave them in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.